Hi, it's Pete Cohen here. Welcome to another My 365 podcast. Now, I'm very excited today to bring you this broadcast because it's with someone who I know very well and someone who has actually been working with me to bring all of these podcasts to you. His name is Casey Woodward. And he's actually a doctor as well, and he's someone who's been extremely helpful and really helped getting this content out to the world. But there's a lot more to this man than just putting some podcasts together. Casey, how are you, my friend? Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Pete. I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do.
Right, yeah, so it's a good question. So I guess my career to date has been a little bit varied. So I guess for those of you who do know me, I'm probably sort of most well known for recently completing my PhD, which was in medical science, and specifically that was all to do with sort of wound healing and inflammation. And so what that really looked at was how a condition which is called hyperlipidemia, so excess cholesterol and fats in the bloodstream, how that impacts on our wound care and how it impacts on cardiovascular disease. So it causes our blood to become more sticky, and I looked at kind of how that occurred and kind of what were the ramifications for that in terms of patients, and then. More recently, I've kind of jumped from human health to animal health, which is something which I think is of equal importance. And so I'm working for a consultancy firm looking at how we can best bring together lots of different players across the animal health sector to really try to drive good welfare and good health status across a number of different species on UK farms. So it's been a difficult and challenging journey, but I'm in a good place, so I can't complain.
Excellent. There's so many questions I want to ask you because there's just so many. I think the first question I have to ask you is, Casey, what is it that you're most passionate about?
It's a good question. It's something I sort of ask myself quite often. I think that it would have to be sort of science in general. I guess I'm a bit sad in that way. I've always had a fascination for how things work, and so I really enjoy sort of science and kind of the whole scientific process of how we go about finding stuff out. And I sort of my kind of area of expertise is obviously in the molecular side of biology, and that's what I really enjoy. But kind of, I've been really passionate recently about kind of alternative health as well, and kind of, how that all ties in with my 365 and some of the focus on kind of good mindsets, and that's something which I've really devoted a lot of time to over the last kind of 18 months or so.
Wow. So let's start off by talking about when it comes to really good health, what do you think are some of the key fundamentals? I mean, good to talk about cholesterol as well, because I know there's a lot of controversy about that. But let's just start off with, from your perspective, what is good health all about?
Well, I would say, I wouldn't profess to be an expert in all health, but I would say that kind of things like a positive outlook on life, is 100%, fundamental for pushing yourself and kind of being sort of in the right mindset to live a healthy lifestyle. Because I think that when we look at people who are stressed, and particularly people who are suffering from inflammation, we know that these people tend to be fatigued in some way. They tend to have stress and elevate stress hormone levels. So I think that a positive mindset, plenty of sleep as well, and a good diet obviously can't be understated for good health. And I think what's been quite interesting since I've been working in the animal health side is that I've looked a little bit at some of the diets which we feed our livestock animals, and these tend to be diets which are very rich in carbohydrates and grains, and it's almost quite ironic that the diets which we feed our pigs to fatten them up is quite similar in a lot of ways to the diets which we commonly eat ourselves.
Wow.
And we wonder why we've got problems with obesity and things like that. So it's a very interesting parallel there. So that's something which I look forward to looking into in more detail.
Well, it's like opening up Pandora's box, isn't it? It's like you're opening something up. It's like, okay, because you've said two things there that have really kind of light bulb gone off for me, which is when you say about, I wasn't expecting you to say, I didn't know what I was expecting you to say actually, but when you say a positive mental attitude, what about the research? I mean, did you come across any kind of research when you were studying around why people should be, or, scientific research that's kind of proving that having a positive mental attitude is better than being stressed?
No, I think it's one of those things which it does need further inquiry. I think that a lot is known about the effects of stress
And heart disease.
In heart disease, and we know that stress, we know a lot of the molecular pathways which cause cortisol, the stress hormone, to impact on inflammation, which is kind of molecular stress. But that doesn't mean to say that we know and we can quantify the effects of positive mental attitude.
Yeah.
So I think that's something which we know it would be quite difficult to do, but it's definitely worthwhile doing it.
But it's quite ironic, isn't it, that obviously people know that there's a link between stress and heart disease. So if there's a link between stress and heart disease, is there a link between stress and cancer? Is there a link between stress and Alzheimer's, and which now is the biggest killer in the United Kingdom, right?
Well, we know that Alzheimer's is kind of being reclassified as a vascular disease, which means that it's very much driven by inflammation, and it's the same underlying processes which are considered to impact on heart disease are to impact on cancer and mental health diseases as well. So it's a real hot topic at the moment.
Wow. So let's talk. I mean, it's fascinating we talk about grains because obviously, my background in weight loss, and having come across years ago this inflammation that was kind of hidden from us around, look, let's cut fat out of the diet because fat makes us fat. Let's put more sugars in, and the effects of carbohydrates. It seems to me that my grandparents, they knew that what made people fat was starch as opposed to fat. So do you think that really is the case, that people are eating too many grains, too many processed foods, which are causing inflammation, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure? Is that the case?
I think so, 100%. I think that we know that fruit and veg and the consumption of vitamins and minerals are kind of tantamount to good health. But I think that if we take a step back and we look at kind of the economic perspective, we know that grains are typically cheaper foods. They're easier to produce on a larger scale. And that obviously that's what drives a lot of people. Is kind of how much money they got available to spend. And it's interesting when I've been talking to farmers, sort of over the last few months, they've sort of said that the percentage of our disposable income which we spend on food has never been lower. So there was a point back in the sort of 50s and 60s where almost half of our disposable money was going on food. And now if you look at that figure, that's around about 10%, and that's largely driven by the fact that our mortgages are going up. The other costs of life are going up as well. So food is sadly sort of that proportion has begun to shrink.
Yeah.
And now it's obviously I think that some of the health concerns are sort of directly tied to that.
So let's talk about inflammation. So is there a correlation between eating too many grains and inflammation in your body, do you think?
I think that there certainly is. I'm just trying to think of what the studies are.
Don't worry about that. People can, if they want to find the studies, they can go and find them. But you've come across studies that have basically highlighted that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so let's talk about the negative side effects that inflammation has on the body, because I know that, Dr. Rakowski, who you've met, when he presented to us in Hull many years ago, I heard this expression for the first time, which is a new term in the medical literature called inflammaging. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think it's probably best described as as inflammation accelerating the aging process. And we could talk for hours and hours, Pete, about kind of how they sort of go hand in hand. But essentially, molecular stress is the elevation of cortisol, really, and cortisol under normal physiological conditions, is useful. It helps us escape when we need to run, like adrenaline and things like that. And it can, even in the modern day, it can help us perform well for short bursts of time for exams and things like that under sort of certain parameters. But when our bodies are continually exposed to it, it puts a lot of metabolic stress on us. That causes us to obviously to burn out, and our cells don't divide as well as they should. It lead to mutations which obviously at the start of cancers and things like that. So
I take it you've got a dog there, right?
Yeah, sorry. He's
no, don't worry. You've taken your work home with you, right?
Yeah, clearly.
So inflammation, and obviously it's what's fascinating about dogs, maybe more so than cats, I don't know, but I often say to people, you should be the person that your dog thinks you are, because often dogs think that, you are the best thing since sliced bread. They tend to be so optimistic, so happy, and don't get too stressed. But so basically what you're saying is stress, thinking too much, being negative, that can cause inflammation. Is it also that if we have a lack of sleep, can that also cause inflammation in the body?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the kind of the endocrine system, that the hormones, which our body needs to balance itself, are very much regulated throughout the sleep process. Along with kind of memory storage and alike. So, I think that if we don't get sleep, or if we don't get high quality sleep, if we're sleeping in rooms which have got too harsh lighting and things like that, then I think that totally impacts on our ability to kind of regenerate, which is obviously what sleep's designed for.
So it seems like we've created a world that we're not really designed to live in, like too much light, too much stimulation. We haven't caught up as much as everything else has evolved. We have evolved, but not at the rate at which that, like, the ability not to sleep would be a good way to survive in the modern world, because we could work 24 hours a day. It just seems like if we're not careful, then we are more predisposed to all of these different conditions that could really affect the quality of our life. So what about cholesterol? Because I think I know Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, who wrote the book, The Great Cholesterol Con. And I'm just curious as to, I know, again, we could talk about this for ages, but is cholesterol a bad thing? And, should we be eating saturated fat? Is having a cholesterol between above 5, is it actually high cholesterol? I'd love your opinion about this, but don't worry, no one's going to hold you accountable for what you're saying.
No, I think that so from my studies, what I was looking at was the particle that cholesterol travels around our body in. So we know that fat, if you mix it with water, it's insoluble, it doesn't mix. And so the same is true in our bodies. So our bodies have a particular protein which cholesterol goes around the body in, and this is called a lipoprotein. And so my PhD was all about looking at lipoproteins, which are predominantly cholesterol based. And now what we know is that when people become stressed, these cholesterols change. They undergo a process called oxidation. Which is what leads to this kind of bad cholesterol image, and these have a number of different effects, on impacting the body. So we know that kind of so from my sort of first-hand experience, I've seen these oxidized lipoproteins have bad effects on a whole range of different cell types. Our white blood cells, our platelets as well, which are responsible for our blood clotting and stick,
Wow.
wound healing. So firsthand, I can say that I know that cholesterol in its modified form is bad. But unmodified cholesterol, we know, has got a lot of, is crucial for cellular health. It looks after our cell membranes, our nerves, to allow us to move our bodies and stuff like that. So I think that cholesterol itself isn't bad. I think it's the modification of cholesterol which is a kind of a byproduct of stress, and the condition that we live in, which really impacts, which raises our risk of cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
So,
Well, having spoken to you a few times, and I ask you, how do you move through the world? You seem to move through the world in a very pragmatic way of, listen, talk to us. How do you move through the world? What are your kind of your values? What are the things that you stand by in how you live your life?
yeah, I mean, so I think it's kind of the opposite of kind of at work. I have to be very kind of looking at theories and kind of taking account a lot of data before we make decisions. Whereas in my personal life, I tend to be very much kind of just as long as we keep moving, get something started, and just get on with things. Because I'm a sort of quite a firm believer that sometimes what is meant to happen will happen, kind of thing. So sometimes some of the decisions which we make, which we stress over, I think, aren't, there's no point in some ways, because, everything tends to work out the way it ought to.
Wow. Wow.
So that's not to say, obviously, that, we can do whatever we want and just kind of, keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But I think that, as long as we keep moving forward, I think the danger for all of us is to become, is to stagnate and stay in the same job where, for 20 years where we've had no progression and we don't really like it. And I know it's easy for me to say as a young 25-year-old, but how I see it anyway, and obviously feel free to disagree, is that movement and variety are kind of paramount to our growth as individuals. And that's kind of what I'm sort of trying to move towards, and keep trying to progress in terms of knowledge, but also then by extension career and stuff like that, and move that way. But so that's kind of how I like to sort of move through the world.
Yeah, it sounds that you've got a growth mindset. You want to grow and learn, but also you've got you can switch off the scientific part of your brain. And you also may be quite spiritual in the thinking of maybe everything happens for a reason and there's something for me to learn. So it's kind of like you're design engineering how your brain works, which is fascinating, because I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't take control.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that this sort of switching mindset has really come about over the last few years, sort of predominantly through obviously, sort of reading different literature, which I was exposed to kind of obviously through the coffee business when we first met, but also then later on through Tales of a Life Coach, and obviously now through My 365. So I feel incredibly grateful for these kind of opportunities that have come my way, and I think that kind of I do look forward to sort of seeing how I've changed in the next 12 months, because it seems to be like if we plotting on a graph, it's the exponential. It's sort of really rocketing up, and I think that fast forward another 12 months, I could be in a really sort of strong place. So.
Well, listen. It's been absolutely awesome working with you, and to be able to say this. One of the things we were just talking about this morning about optimism, and fascinating research done around if you want to have an optimistic life or a good life, you need to find activities that you enjoy. You need to have a life where you can engage in something, and you need to have a life of meaning. And then today I was talking about, think of someone who who's alive, write 300 words and then go to them and actually tell them. Now, I'm going to tell you, I haven't written the 300 words, but I'm extremely grateful for the efforts that you have gone to help me in helping me fulfill one of the needs or one of the goals I have, which is to impact the lives of 10 million people. And you have really helped me in that process on many, many different levels with getting out these podcasts that we've done with many people, and we've got some great ones that we're going to be launching. So I'm very, very grateful to you.
You're too kind. I'm very grateful for what you've done for not just for me, but for everyone else. It's there's a lot of people who I could sort of say, I'm grateful to, Pete, but I think that you've really genuinely impacted on my life and obviously by extension the people, those who are closest around me. So
that's great. That's great. So look, tell me as we kind of start to wrap this up, a couple of things of the podcasts that we did this year. Which are the ones that have really kind of really struck home at you and gone, whoa, when you listened to it and you heard it?
Yeah, so I think the one which I've always listened to and I probably listened to the most is the Alderley Harrison one.
Yeah.
Which he I think he kind of really sort of struck a chord with me. It's a really, really good podcast. I'd definitely recommend anyone to listen to it, particularly if you're from kind of I think if you're from the southeast of England, you'll definitely be able to relate. And even if you're just of that kind of generation that kind of watched him and stuff, you'll definitely take something from it.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed the one recently, actually. The member of the month one, so with Yvonne.
Yeah.
That was really good. I always like hearing from members and kind of. Because I always think they've got an interesting way. It's always interesting for me to kind of see what's the parts of My 365 which people have kind of taken on board and adopted. So that's another one which I recommend. Oh, there's been so many. Obviously, the Ronnie O'Sullivan ones. That's a double part. That's really good. I know we did that a little while ago, didn't we? But that's a really, really good one.
I really liked. I've liked pretty much all of them, but the one with Joe DeSana, I love the way, in fact, we're going to be on his podcast one of these days. Mm-hmm. I recorded it some time ago, but and I think you're a bit like this, that this kind of delayed gratification, mm-hmm. It's like thinking of it like a muscle that you've got to say to yourself in life, delay things that you want, so I'll have that, but I won't have it now. I'll have it later. I'll have it tomorrow. And you really stretch I don't know how to explain it, but it's just. And he spoke about those, I think those people in Japan that had to run those marathons and that went on. They had to run a marathon every day, and so many of them died. And he walked past these gravestones. But everyone's got a story to tell, and it's great to be able to share those stories. But it's also great to create your own story, right? So,
absolutely.
What would you say to people out there that are, I don't want to say necessarily lost, but they're not sure about what the future holds? What would you say to people?
I would say, and it's easier to say than to practice, but I would say never lose hope, because there's you never know what's around the corner. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you never know kind of which people are around the corner who can totally, change your life. And changing your life doesn't have to be a big, long 2-year process. It can be as little as as a few days before you can really alter that mindset. And I think it's one of the things we've talked about, Pete, obviously on My 365 is this how babies and young children they can switch their mindset from their emotions in a blink of an eye. And I think that we as adults we've still got that ability. It's I totally I'm a massive supporter of that. You are what you feel, and you don't have to feel crap.
Yeah.
It's to put it bluntly. It's, and I know there's obviously some exceptions. Obviously things like depression, we don't have all the answers, and it's easier to
yeah. But again, it comes back to, I love that, and I've just taken something from that as well. I'm going to put that in the front of my mind for today, that we always have an opportunity to change the way we think in an instant. And when it comes to depression, we can, it's a subject, obviously some people are very careful about what they say about this, but I think the science is unequivocal that a huge amount of depression is related to stress, and that's how we manage ourselves. And then the stress is related to inflammation, and it's kind of, it's complicated, but it's not complicated. It really, it's like there's something that we can do. And I'm excited about continuing to put information out there and working with you. And I'm very thankful for, once again, your time. This is a podcast I wanted to do some time ago. But Casey, tell us, how can people find out more about you? Can we all follow you on Facebook?
Yeah. I mean, follow me on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm on both of those.
What's your handle?
Handle is Casey, Casey J Woodward, WOODWARD.
And on Facebook?
Facebook, yeah. I think it's just the same, Casey Woodward. Feel free to get in touch. Send me an email. Email address is casey.woodward, WOODWARD @icloud.com.
Fantastic. It's going to be amazing to see what people get from listening to this. I know that I've personally taken a lot from it, and thank you so much. Let's get this information out there, and let's change the world.
Cheers for having us, Pete.
Thank you.